So if you've been watching the mind-melting mystery on Apple TV Plus called Shining Girls, and you keep wondering when the heck we're actually going to get some answers, your wait is over. Episode 6 is finally beginning to unravel some of the questions that have been forming since the very beginning. This is going to have some minor spoilers from the previous episodes, but I am going to stay away from any big specifics for this current one just so that you can enjoy it as I did. We've been told how Jamie Bell's Harper can move through time, or at least repeat it in a way so that he knows what will happen to someone. But even he's caught off guard by Elisabeth Moss's ability, maybe, I guess, to alter reality. And we've not really been shown that she knows how to control it, or that she actually is, so that is just a guess on my part. But the bigger point is that when the two of them were fighting in that laundromat, her hair changed, as did the wallpaper with each thud of the attack. Then the laundromat became the bar, and at that point, my brain fell out of my head. In the last episode, we saw many repeating events, where things seemed to be happening in the present, but we'd already seen portions of these before, and they felt like they had happened earlier within the timeline. We also watched Harper witness Kirby change when she was at Jin-Suk's place. And then Dan and Kirby also went to visit Leo, who believed that he was from the past. Now, maybe he is because he is friends with Harper, and they just seem to have some history together. This episode almost exclusively follows Harper, so we get a great deal of backstory on him. Now, this isn't backstory like how he grew up, even though we do get some of that info through bits of dialogue, but we get to observe how he is as a person. We watch his behaviors, which I found interesting because he seems like a pretty damaged guy, and he's certainly missing a moral compass if he indeed is behind all these murders. This episode, though, does a good job of laying the foundation for all that we've seen up until this point, and I think it also gives quite a few answers to a lot of those questions. And there are still portions of the mystery that haven't been addressed yet, but you know what? That's a good thing, considering that there are still 2 more episodes after this one. The visual effects have always been subtle, but they're effective, and I love how they're used in this episode. There's this constant low-level confusion that just permeates the scenes, and a lot of that feeling comes because we're figuring out a lot of the clues just as Harper is, so we're right there along for the ride with him. I love that level of immersiveness. And sometimes we might figure out something before he does, but I found myself pretty much cluing into the ideas right along with him. Something in this episode that I found cool is there are parts within a certain location that make parts of them feel like we're watching a film on a projector. Now, the light streams in from various angles, and it has this slight flickering effect to it that shines on or around the characters. Now, while I'm not quite sure what it totally means, it does give a sense of motion and movement, even when there isn't any. And for me, while it was cool to see, it also became a bit subtly discomforting. Now, I felt that the storytelling in this was also a bit more direct than it has been in previous episodes. Now, that's probably because we're watching more of a linear storyline play out with just one character rather than watching several different characters interact, which is then complicated by shifting realities. At first, when I watched this episode, I felt like it didn't necessarily provide as many answers as I had hoped, but after I was noodling it for a bit and then really just thinking over all the dialogue exchanges and the way that the scenes play out within those, we are really given some good insight into one of the core aspects of the show. And even some motivations come into play here, but I appreciate that there are still elements that haven't yet been addressed, which I had mentioned before. There are also some small bits here and there within this episode that point to other episodes and elements that we've already witnessed within the story. And Jamie Bell did such a phenomenal job in this one. I feel like I really understand Harper now because of the way that he teases out some of the story moments. And Bell effectively shows us Harper's psyche, which then allows us to see what makes him tick and how a particular early mindset was present and then exaggerated and perverted through discovery. Now, Harper isn't solo in this episode. We also get to watch him have interactions with Leo. Now, I found these conversations to be revealing when it came to personality traits and then shortcomings. And the dynamic between the two, it's an odd one. It makes complete sense, based on what we see, but it also makes you wonder how good of friends they actually are. Now, I was really intrigued by the theme of obsession that plays out in this episode. I think it could be argued that that has been an ongoing theme throughout the show, but in this one in particular, it gets examined through several different angles, each adding a layer of uneasiness to the narrative. So overall, if you've been chomping at the bit to get some answers, this is the episode for you. Jamie Bell absolutely kills it as we dive deeper into who Harper is and how he's seemingly able to know the future for some people. The reveals are rather creepy in what they mean, and we get to see more into what makes Harper tick. And this episode, like many of the others, is only 47 minutes long, but it's able to pack a bunch into the story without it feeling bloated or even rushed to fit it all into the runtime. And the story doesn't drag either. The answers begin almost from the get-go, and then they continue to unfold in front of us, while thankfully still keeping a bunch left unanswered to be addressed in those final 2 episodes. And while the theme of obsession has been present throughout the season, this episode gives us different and more focused perspectives on how it can shape our characters' motivations. There's no sex or nudity, a lot of profanity, and a bunch of violence. Now, just as a reminder, I am not giving the individual episodes a score, but I'm going to be giving one for the entire season once it's complete. So what are your predictions for the remaining 2 episodes of the show? Will the mystery be solved, or do you think they're going to just continue it out for maybe more than one season? And if that's the case, which would you prefer? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.